She said she will always love you.
He had been coming to the little railway station every Thursday morning for so long that people had stopped wondering why. The station sat on the edge of a quiet English town where trains arrived exactly on time. Pigeons gathered beneath the old iron benches, and the station clock always seemed 5 minutes slower than the rest of the world. Arthur Bennett liked that. At 74, he had learned that there was comfort in places where time did not seem to be in a hurry. He sat on the same wooden bench beneath the hanging flower baskets with a paper cup of tea that had gone cold long before he noticed. He wasn't waiting for a train. He hadn't boarded one in almost 6 years. He was waiting for something much harder to explain. Hope. Not the loud, confident kind of hope that belongs to young people. The quiet kind. The kind that survives simply because it doesn't know how to die. Inside the worn leather satchel resting beside him were things no one else would have considered valuable. A faded family photograph, 28 letters that had never been answered, a tiny knitted baby sock, and a newspaper clipping, yellow with age, carrying a headline that Arthur had read thousands of times over 42 years. Missing young woman still not found. He no longer unfolded the clipping. He already knew every word. Before we begin, if you've ever believed that love can survive silence, that families can find one another even after decades apart, please like this video, subscribe to Kindness Tales, and share it with someone who still believes miracles sometimes arrive quietly. Arthur Bennett had spent 42 years searching for his daughter. Not every day, not in dramatic ways. Life had required him to work, to pay bills, to bury his wife, to grow older. But every single week, he searched a little more. He checked missing person databases. He followed tiny leads that always seemed to disappear. He answered phone calls that usually ended in disappointment. He carried the photograph everywhere he went, just in case, because hope, he had discovered, didn't ask whether it was reasonable. It simply stayed. The photograph showed a young woman laughing into the wind beside a railway crossing. Her name was Eleanor. She had been 23 years old. She was 7 months pregnant, and she disappeared on a rainy afternoon in October. No goodbye, no explanation, no body, just gone. The police searched. Friends searched. Arthur searched until his knees could no longer carry him as far as his heart wanted to go. People slowly stopped asking if there was any news. Neighbors stopped mentioning Eleanor's name because they believed they were protecting him from pain. But grief doesn't disappear because people stop talking about it. It simply becomes quieter. Arthur folded the photograph and slipped it back into the satchel. Across the station platform, children laughed while chasing pigeons. An elderly couple shared a sandwich. A station worker swept away leaves that would return before lunchtime. Life continued. It always does. Arthur smiled gently at the ordinary beauty of it. Then he heard tiny footsteps. Not running, skipping. A little girl wearing a bright yellow raincoat wandered a few steps ahead of her mother, humming a tune only she seemed to know. She couldn't have been older than 6. Her curly brown hair escaped from beneath a knitted hat. She carried a stuffed rabbit whose ears had clearly been loved for many years. Children notice things adults stopped seeing long ago. She walked past Arthur. Then suddenly, she stopped. She looked back. She stared. Arthur smiled politely, expecting the familiar curiosity children often had toward older strangers. Instead, the little girl slowly walked toward him, very slowly, as though she recognized something she couldn't explain. Her eyes never left his face. Arthur felt a strange chill move through him. Children sometimes stared because he reminded them of someone, sometimes because of his white beard, sometimes because older faces simply fascinated them. But this felt different. The little girl stood directly in front of him, She looked into his eyes with complete seriousness. Then she leaned closer, as though sharing an important secret, and whispered, "I think you're my grandpa." Arthur forgot how to breathe. The paper cup slipped from his fingers and rolled across the platform. For several seconds, neither of them moved. He looked at the little girl. She looked back without fear, without uncertainty, only curiosity. Arthur finally managed to whisper, "What did you say?" She tilted her head. "My mummy has your picture." Everything inside Arthur stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Before he could answer, a woman's voice called across the platform. "Lucy." The little girl turned. "I'm here, Mom." A young woman hurried toward them, carrying 2 shopping bags. She looked tired in the familiar way parents often do. Her coat was slightly unbuttoned. Loose strands of chestnut hair framed her face. She smiled apologetically as she reached her daughter. "I'm so sorry," she said. "She talks to everyone." Arthur hardly heard her, because the moment she looked up, something inside him shifted. Not recognition. Not exactly. It was something smaller. A feeling. Like hearing the first few notes of a song you haven't heard in 40 years. The woman thanked Arthur for being kind. She gently took Lucy's hand. Then Lucy looked back once more. "Mummy." The little girl pointed toward Arthur's satchel. "Show him." The mother's smile disappeared. Arthur noticed it instantly. Parents become experts at hiding worry, but not fast enough. "What do you mean?" she asked softly. "The picture," Lucy said. "The one in your purse." The woman froze. Arthur felt his heartbeat begin to pound inside his chest. Slowly, very slowly, she looked from Lucy to Arthur, then back again. "I don't know what she's talking about," she said, but her voice sounded different, thinner, less certain. Children notice hesitation. Lucy frowned. "Yes, you do. The old picture. The smiling lady. The man beside her." Arthur's hands began trembling. He had heard those words before, hundreds of times, from investigators, from strangers, from people convinced they had seen Eleanor somewhere. Every hope had ended the same way. Disappointment. He promised himself years ago never to believe too quickly again. Still, his heart refused to listen. Arthur cleared his throat. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to intrude. But," he paused, choosing each word with extraordinary care. "May I ask, what picture is she talking about?" The woman looked at him for several long seconds. The station around them continued exactly as before. A train arrived. Passengers climbed aboard. Announcements echoed overhead. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Yet around the 3 of them, everything seemed strangely still. Finally, the woman reached slowly into her handbag. Arthur noticed her hand shaking. She removed an old leather wallet. Inside it, folded carefully between 2 pieces of clear plastic, was a photograph. Old, faded, worn soft at the edges. She stared at it before speaking. "My adoptive mother gave me this before she died. I never knew who these people were." Arthur's pulse hammered in his ears. She handed him the photograph. The moment it touched his hands, the world disappeared. His fingers began trembling so violently he nearly dropped it, because he knew that photograph. Not one like it. The photograph. It had been taken 43 years earlier at a summer fair. Arthur himself had taken it. Standing beneath a row of blue and white flags was Eleanor, laughing, exactly as he remembered. Beside her was Arthur, 30 years younger, holding his daughter's shoulder. On the back, written in Eleanor's unmistakable handwriting, were 5 simple words. "My first home, forever loved." Arthur's vision blurred. He couldn't tell whether it was age or tears. He looked up at the woman. She was watching him carefully now, not frightened, not defensive, simply waiting, as though she had been waiting her entire life for someone to recognize that photograph. Arthur tried to speak. Nothing came out. Only after several attempts did the words finally escape. Where? He whispered. Where did you get this? The young woman swallowed. I've been asking that same question for as long as I can remember. Arthur held the photograph with both hands, afraid that if he loosened his grip, the moment itself might disappear. For 42 years, he had imagined hundreds of possible endings. He had imagined finding Eleanor living quietly in another country. He had imagined discovering she had changed her name. He had imagined receiving one final letter. He had even imagined never knowing the truth at all. But he had never imagined this. A little girl, a faded photograph, a stranger who looked strangely familiar. The young woman finally broke the silence. My name is Emily. I'm 36. I was adopted when I was 4. Arthur slowly looked up. His heartbeat seemed louder than the trains arriving behind them. My adoptive parents loved me. Emily continued softly. They never hid that I was adopted, but they knew very little. They only told me my mother died when I was very young. Arthur closed his eyes. A single tear slipped down his weathered face. Not because the word surprised him, but because somewhere deep inside, he had spent 42 years preparing himself to hear them. Emily carefully sat beside him on the old bench. Little Lucy climbed onto the bench between them, completely unaware that the adults beside her were carrying the weight of half a lifetime. Children have a beautiful way of believing that if everyone is sitting together, everything must already be okay. Arthur smiled at her. It was the first genuine smile that had reached his eyes in years. Emily watched him. I've carried that photograph since I was 18. I've shown it to historians, genealogists, police officers. I've uploaded it online more times than I can count. No one ever recognized it. She paused. Until today. Arthur nodded slowly, because nobody else could. He turned the photograph over once more. His fingers rested gently against Eleanor's handwriting. I watched her write these words. Emily looked at him. You did? Arthur's voice trembled. She always dotted the letter I with tiny circles. Emily looked closer. She smiled through tears. So do I. Neither of them spoke. Some silences deserve to remain untouched. Lucy suddenly looked at Arthur. Why are you crying? Arthur laughed quietly through the tears. Sometimes happy things look exactly like sad things. Lucy considered that very carefully. Then she nodded. That makes sense. Arthur smiled again. Children accept truths adults spend years trying to understand. After several quiet minutes, Emily reached into her handbag once more. There was something else. I never understood it. She unfolded an old envelope. It had never been opened. The paper had become soft with age. Across the front, in careful handwriting, were the words, For my baby, when you're ready to know me. Asterisk, asterisk. Arthur stopped breathing. He knew that handwriting instantly. Eleanor. Emily looked at him. My adoptive mother asked me not to open it until I found someone who knew where it came from. I think that someone is you. Arthur carefully accepted the envelope. His hand shook so much that Emily gently helped him hold it. For 42 years, he had searched for answers. Now, the answers were asking permission to be opened. Very slowly, Arthur unfolded the letter. The paper crackled with age. The ink had faded, but Eleanor's words were still there. My precious little one, if you're reading this, then life did not happen the way I dreamed it would. Please know one thing before anything else. You were loved before I ever saw your face. If I'm not there, it was never because I wanted to leave you. Arthur stopped reading. His voice had broken. Emily quietly took the letter. She continued reading through her own tears. Your grandfather is the kindest man I have ever known. If life is kind, please find him someday. Tell him, I never stopped loving home. Arthur buried his face in his hands. 42 years, and those were the words he had waited to hear. Not that Eleanor had survived. Not that everything had been perfect. Only that she had never stopped loving home. Lucy gently wrapped her tiny arms around Arthur's shoulders, without anyone asking her to, without understanding everything. Sometimes children simply know when someone needs holding. Arthur hugged her back, very gently, very carefully, as though he had waited a lifetime for exactly that embrace. Before we go further, we should pause here, because moments like this are never created by one miracle alone. They are built by hundreds of ordinary acts of kindness. Emily's adoptive parents could have hidden the truth. Instead, they kept every photograph, every letter, every tiny clue. A retired librarian spent weeks helping Emily search forgotten newspaper archives without charging her a penny. An elderly neighbor encouraged Arthur every Christmas to keep placing Eleanor's name on missing person websites, even after everyone else believed it was pointless. A volunteer at a genealogy center scanned old photographs simply because she believed families deserved answers. None of those people ever met one another. None of them knew they were building a bridge that would one day bring a grandfather and granddaughter together. Kindness often works that way, quietly, patiently, without asking for recognition. Emily finally asked the question she had carried her entire life. What was my mother like? Arthur smiled through fresh tears. Oh, she laughed before finishing her own jokes. She couldn't keep houseplants alive. She always sang while cooking, even though she forgot half the words. Lucy giggled. My mummy does that too. Emily laughed. I do. Arthur nodded. Of course you do. He spent the next hour telling stories. About Eleanor feeding ducks in the rain. About birthdays that always ended with homemade apple pie. About dancing barefoot in the kitchen. About the tiny wooden music box she loved more than anything. Emily listened without interrupting. She wasn't simply hearing stories. She was collecting memories she had never been given. Every sentence felt like receiving another year of her mother's life. Then Arthur remembered something. Wait here. He opened his old leather satchel. Beneath the letters, beneath the newspaper clippings, lay a small wooden box wrapped inside a blue handkerchief. He placed it into Emily's hands. I've carried this for 42 years. Emily slowly opened it. Inside rested a delicate silver locket. Her eyes filled instantly. I've seen this before. Arthur looked surprised. You have. Emily nodded. My mother wore this. In every photograph. Arthur smiled. I was supposed to give it to her on the day your baby was born. His voice cracked again. I thought I'd never get the chance. Emily carefully placed the locket around her neck. Lucy clapped happily. It belongs there. Arthur couldn't stop smiling. Neither could Emily. Hours passed without any of them noticing. The station became quieter. Afternoon sunlight stretched across the platform. Finally, Emily looked at Arthur. Would you? She hesitated. The question seemed almost too important to ask. Would you like to come for Sunday dinner? Arthur blinked. He hadn't been invited to Sunday dinner in nearly 10 years. He swallowed hard. I like that very much. Lucy immediately corrected her mother. No. Emily smiled. What do you mean, no? Lucy looked at Arthur. We don't invite grandpas. They just come. Arthur laughed. A full laugh. The kind that begins somewhere deep inside and surprises even the person laughing. People nearby turned and smiled without knowing why. Joy has a way of introducing itself. A few weeks later, the DNA results arrived. They confirmed what every heart already knew. Emily was Arthur's granddaughter. The little girl had been right from the very beginning. Sometimes children notice truth long before adults find proof. Arthur no longer spent Thursdays waiting alone at the railway station. Now, he spent Sundays building wooden birdhouses with Lucy in the garden. Emily filled the house with laughter that sounded astonishingly like Eleanor's. The empty chair at Arthur's dining table was empty no longer. One afternoon, Lucy climbed onto his lap and asked, "Grandpa, were you lonely before we found you?" Arthur looked toward the family photographs, now covering his living room wall. Then he kissed the top of her head. "I wasn't lonely anymore. The moment you whispered those 6 little words. I think of my grandpa. And perhaps the greatest miracle was never that Arthur found his family after 42 years. Perhaps the greatest miracle was that love had been patiently waiting for him the whole time. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a comment, and share it with someone who believes that hope is never wasted. Subscribe to Kindness Tales for more stories of family, forgiveness, quiet courage, and unexpected reunions. Because sometimes the people you spent a lifetime searching for are already walking toward you, one small step at a time.